Welcome to the second episode of Beneath the Bushes, as I'm calling it for now. Today, what's on my mind is heaven and earth as concepts that I've understood through Jonathan Peugeot and Matthew Peugeot and the Bible. Quick cover: I'm not religious, really. I don't go to church and stuff, but the symbolism in the way that it's been described to me seems, I don't know, it kind of just seems like everything. It kind of just seems like it's like the explanatory basis of a lot of other ideas. So understanding these concepts seem like shortcuts, almost like cheat codes to understanding lots of other things that previously seemed quite disconnected. I used to operate under the assumption that, that there's nothing really to religion. It's just kind of like it's a plaster for existential angst that the opiate of the masses is the phrase, is the famous phrase. What people use to soothe themselves when they get scared that nothing means anything. It's all right, I'll go to heaven one day. And it all just seemed a little bit like just stories, really. Didn't seem very useful. And I don't think that anymore, but I wouldn't either call myself a Christian or under any other religion. But the concepts of heaven and earth, I've learned are ancient concepts and relate to lots of other things. So I want to try and begin to flesh them out a little bit today in how I understand them. So I think we're going to start with heaven. So heaven, when you say it, most people, and to my ears is also, sounds like where you go when you die. It sounds like heaven and hell are kind of these is the pairing, isn't it? And if you live your life, and if you're good, you'll go to heaven, and if you're bad and sin too much, you'll go to hell. Now, I'm not interested in that, to be honest with you. I'm not interested in that at all. By heaven, now mean, in the context of in symbolism, very different. It's almost worth forgetting anything you know about heaven, and then maybe later sort of being like, oh yeah, I can kind of see how we got this place in the sky where you go up the stairs to God's gate, and I can see where you were coming from. But it's better, and I found it better, just to start all over. Okay, just forget everything you know about that word. And instead, we have to now reintroduce it. Well, what is it we mean by heaven? The easiest, for me, to understanding that word was what is similar or common between many things, like on earth. So let's have a look. So I've got some pens here, okay? Now, the concept of a pen, okay, does not physically exist. This here is plastic. It's plastic. It's got some foam there, and I can take this bit of material and I could snap it and crush it up, and the material, it would still weigh the same. The atoms would still be there. They would just be arranged differently. But there's a certain configuration that I can mold the plastic into, so that it hosts. It has a function and then can be called a pen. Now, that form, the reason we would associate that with heaven is because heaven's, by its nature, is difficult to touch. It's intangible. It's invisible. It's ethereal. It's not of this world. Okay, it's not of this world, and that's a good way to think about form. If you're unfamiliar with the way I'm using the word form here, I'm using the word form in contrast with the word matter. Okay, so any object, we can be, and this is old philosophy. Okay, this is old ancient philosophy, and any object I can describe it both in its form, that is its shape. So in this case, this is the shape of a mug, as well as its material. I can say what's it made of, and I can answer those questions both, scientifically. I can describe the measurements of its form. I could do a 3D scan of this mug, and I could also ask what's it made of. I think this is some kind of uh, ceramic, good word. These pens, it's plastic. I've got other plastic things here. Okay, this isn't a pen, although they're both plastic. But because it's got a different configuration, it's a different thing. Now, why am I bringing this up when talking about heaven? What does the mug and the pens have to do with heaven? Well, notice how the form of a pen, okay, I've got loads more pens here, if you haven't got the idea already. The form of a pen is not specific or unique to any of these particular instances, okay? So I've got 3 pens here. Yeah, each of these, so you understand now that actually the form is somewhat ineffable or intangible. The tangible part is these particular pens, but there is something about, there is a penness, a pen vibe, a pen identity, the form of a pen, which exists actually outside of any particular instantiation, any particular example of a pen. And this is the same for all objects. You know, I can describe, and this is captured in our language in the use of a and the. So I can say a pen. If I say pass me a pen, I ask you to pass me not any particular pen, but just a pen, any object that happens to be or the characterized by a pen. A pen, and but the pen or a particular pen would be, no, I want that one. You see, and that's the same for a person versus just a generic a person versus this person, or a mug or this mug. So we can talk about things both in their particular, a cat, like my cat, or just a general cat. We can talk about things in their particular as well as their identity is actually the word there, and that's so. So now we've kind of got this idea. So what's this to do with heaven? Heaven is a good way to think about heaven that I currently think about heaven, I'm trying to wrestle with, is heaven as a collection of identities. Okay, a collection of as opposed to their specific examples. So the concept of cats, the concept of pens, the concept of mugs, the concept of people, the thing that makes them that thing, their properties, doesn't exist anywhere. I can't locate you to the concept of a cat. I can show you an example of a cat, and there's no one cat that has the features of all cats. So a cat can be, you can have tabby cat, you can have a black or a white cat. You can't have them all at once, you see. In the same way, I can't have a red pen. A pen can be either red or blue or green, but you can't have a red, green, and blue pen, otherwise it's something different. My point being that when we move from examples towards identities, we begin to generalize, and it becomes more and more vague. And I don't mean that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just when you move vertically from earth to heaven, you give up details so that you might have generalizations. And you can imagine, you know, generalizations are what's common between things. That's what it means to generalize. So you have these two. And notice what I'm doing with my hands here. Okay, when I'm talking about upwards motion, when I'm doing this, I'm talking about generalizing. I'm talking about moving towards heaven and moving from examples to the principle of a category or the form, which all the examples have in common. Okay, now that was a ramble, and I hope it began to make sense. There's this other aspect of heaven now, because that's heaven quite as sort of analytically. There's an aspect of heaven that's a little bit more sentimental, because notice that all the things we've talked about here, at least the man-made objects, the mug or the pens, have a purpose. Okay, and that's really important when we're discussing identities. By identities, I just mean identities as opposed to a particular thing. The identity of a cat, of a mug, of a pen, as opposed to any particular one. When we're discussing identities, a part of in this Christian symbolism worldview, they have a purpose. They have to have a higher purpose. Okay, so obviously a pen's higher purpose is for me to write, a mug's for me to drink hot beverages, this microphone so that I can record audio. And if the object fails to perform its purpose, the identity will no longer be hosted in the material object. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So this right now, I can call this a pen because the plastic and the ink and the foam are ordered in so it affords me the function of writing. Okay, so the identity of a pen, which if I snapped all the pens in the world, the concept of pen is still there. If I was to create one, the concept would rush in to the world, into Earth from heaven, and host this earthly body, which had been arranged in a harmonious manner so that heaven might, come to Earth and something might exist. Okay, getting a bit far ahead there, but yeah, if this pen was to break, okay, and stop being able to write, I could no longer really call it a pen. I might be able to call it a broken pen insofar that it used to work, or that I'm able to recover it. But there's a certain point where, not only is the ink run out, but maybe it's snapped in two. The plastics, I melt the plastic and actually rearrange it into what looks more like a doorstop. At that point, it even begins to host a new identity, you see. But the material itself's not changed. It's been rearranged, it's been transformed maybe, but notice how the identity, or at least how you could think of it, how we perceive it, changes. So that's another crucial part. We've got these two parts we've discussed now of heaven. One is this idea of commonalities between things and how it's ineffable because all we have is tangible examples of things, when actually there's similarities. What they have in common is a little bit intangible, although exists in a different kind of way. And we're saying whatever that is, those similarities, we're calling those identities. And it's any kind of word, any kind of noun is an identity, any kind of object, camera, laptop, GoPro, stand, microphone. They're all identities which can be made materially and real on Earth. Then we went on to say a further example and further requirement for something to be an identity is for it to actually have a purpose. So things are made have to be made for a higher purpose, and if they fail to fulfill that purpose, then they fail to host the identity in the material object. Now, this language of hosting identities is something I got from Matthew Peugeot in his book, The Language of Creation. Great book. And it's really useful to think about these identities as sort of floating as kind of spirits in the air. And when we as creatures mold something to the right shape, we kind of present it to heaven, and it is judged by heaven. And if heaven deems it acceptable, the identity will be hosted inside of the material object. You can imagine now, like there's a kind of you're imagining it. I can't, it's not in the atoms, but I'm imagining it, and it's real in a different sense. But there's a spirit of a pen which is being hosted in this, so long as it's working. A spirit of, you get the idea. And that's a different way to use the word spirit. I mean, the word spirit can mean, we think of it like fantasy, of spirits that come and speak to us. But we also think of the idea of spirits can sometimes animate us. We see that in horror films. Evil spirits can have taken him over or taken her over. So that's a different kind of idea, but there's still this idea that a spirit might host something and animate it, and when it is being hosted by it, it's being controlled by it. So we can think of that kind of hosting analogous to what we know there. Yeah, okay, so I think we've covered a good amount of what I kind of see heaven as. And I think it might be a good place to leave it. But yeah, if anyone's interested in this project, please leave a comment or like, or do whatever. Show your interest, please, because I'm just going to keep making these. And I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm figuring it out, and I'm hoping that that's obvious enough on camera and comes across. So, cool. Thank you very much.